shall we now move on to the last public session of the day, or last but one, which is the joint IESBA IASB project, and that is pertaining to the PI. And I think for the longest time, we know we've been talking about the collaborative efforts on projects that have similar principles for consistency and ensuring consistent application when they do become into implementation. So at this juncture, let me think aloud Tom and Gabriela to then lead us on this focus area for the PI definition and receive the updates on what has happened since the last progress update. Thank you.
So, Gabriella, I don't know whether you want
No, please do start. Please do start,
Okay.
because the
So,
main
like,
developments were on your side.
So if you advance to slide 3. So the most important thing is, as you know, our board was very much looking forward to what the take-up of the IESBA definition is, and that being a pivotal element. IESBA agreed to do a post-implementation review, and we have committed as two boards to work together in that action, because it will have an impact on both of our paths forward. You know, remember that the purpose of this definition are slightly different. We're trying to stay as coordinated as possible, and we landed where we landed, and that's been much discussed. So the most important thing is that we do joint action, which we're committed to as it relates to the post-implementation review. And for that, we would have a joint project team throughout the joint action. This goes to very much to a topic that you asked me about earlier. In that context, it was experts, but you were asking about joint action. Doing things together where it makes sense is very much a priority for these two boards today. So I don't have much else to add. I don't know if Gabriella or Ken want to add a little bit about their thinking in terms of what they're hearing in the marketplace and also the preparation for their post-implementation review.
Sorry, I was not being able. Sorry.
Oh, yes. I was about to say, Gabriela, you're on mute if you're talking. Thanks, Gabriela. Go ahead.
No, I was not. I was not talking. So, if you can move to the next slide. So, on the IAASB and IESBA adoption and implementation, and I think it was what you were moving me for, right, Tom?
I was just going to ask if there was any details about what your latest stance, what your staff has been preparing on post-implementation reviews and in the marketplace on PI.
No, not really. There is nothing special that I want to add to what you said. So I don't know if you want me, Chair, to move to the next topic, or if we should stay on this one.
Let me just check by show of hands if there's any questions from the board at this juncture before we move on to. Oh, yes, Janine's hand is up. Janine?
Yes, thank you. I have a question. It's in relation to the last point on the slide, the joint project team to present to both boards throughout period of joint action. The period of joint action, does that mean then that now we're talking about this specific PI, is this only the PI definition, this slide, or more general also for the future? That's maybe my first question. Because if can I, based on this last sentence, assume that you are planning then, if there are future projects that address both boards, like in terms of the content and there is overlap, that you then would sort of work out that you will deal with those projects sort of at the same time or the same time frame, so that there is indeed this joint project team and that both boards are working on that same topic, as separately of course also, but through the joint project team you align and strengthen your cooperation so that the outcome of both boards deliberations is interoperable and works in practice. That's my question.
Thanks, Janine. I also see that Mark has put his hand up. Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me on this PI issue that unless we get to a holy grail where all jurisdictions around the world adopt the same definition, which I think is highly unlikely, there is always going to be a problem and a tension here, because IAASB does not allow jurisdictional differences to creep into its standards, which I understand. So it seems to me that this could end up in a lot of work, which ends up in the status quo, where the IAASB is unable to adopt the PI definition set out by IESBA. So therefore, it leads me to think, wouldn't it save an awful lot of work if the IAASB went down the line that was suggested by IOSCO and had a definition for entities, for which the additional requirements apply, that is basically the IAASB's definition, and call it something else other than a public interest entity.
Mark, I don't want to prejudge that outcome. We will determine where the evidence is when we do this post-implementation review. Obviously, we could get to an issue, the same issue that we're at today, or we could not. And so, I feel like we have a process in place. We'll hear market feedback. If we think that it's the right path to go down to based upon the evidence, the time, then we may go down the path you suggest. But I wouldn't prejudge that yet. From my standpoint, it's like most things, there's a risk of a lot of things out there. Janine, I also say the fact that we're willing to do joint project teams shows that we're willing to do it, but it'll be on a case-by-case basis. Where it makes sense, we'll consider it. And where it doesn't, we won't. But I think it's a tool in our toolkit. We're willing to, as two boards, to work jointly together. We've been working jointly together for a long time. We're conscious that there's a lot of scrutiny on this topic. The first thing is, in terms of our priorities, maybe by planning more together, like we're going to do on the strategy and work plan, we'll be better positioned to do joint efforts when it makes sense. But it'll be on a case-by-case effort. And in this case, it's definitely something we're doing jointly.
Thanks, Tom. And I think there is a need to acknowledge that collaboration efforts that is coming through. And I think after our certification as well, we actually did acknowledge that we still have a bit of work to do now with that alignment between IESBA and the IASB. I think it's important to note that for the public interest, we are actually looking at this as a joint project, and it's just there to address the appropriate route to address those underlying matters that we've seen from that global adoption. and then at the same time to make sure that we have interoperable public interest entity definition with categories beyond just the public traded entity. So we do acknowledge the efforts between, I think, the two bodies in terms of progress to date. Janine, I see you want to come back.
Yes, thank you. I also want to say that I think it's a very good step forward that you are thinking about this survey, to do that jointly for the strategy and work plan, and then and these joint projects going forward case by case when needed. That is good. I also have this follow-up question on what Checho was just saying. That was also on the, I call it the underlying root causes of what happened with the PI definition. And I think that also the mechanism of adoption and in jurisdictions, when can you say we have adopted the code, and you add-ons are often allowed when it makes things stronger, but carve-outs not, for instance, for the ISAs. And is that then also not affecting this whole PI definition? That was also something that we understood, that was also one of the underlying issues. And my question is, how are you dealing with these and maybe other underlying root causes that makes it a little bit difficult sometimes in certain case-by-case projects to avoid a repetition of what happens in the PI projects? So are you also looking into the root causes? Thank you.
Well,
I don't know, Gabrielle, you want to go first?
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead. No, I was just so.
You know,
Go ahead.
we're gonna talk about some of this stuff at our strategy of work plan survey, look for areas of cooperation. But you know, I feel like we've discussed this topic a bit at this board, and I think Mark highlighted the IAASB's position is that full adoption of our standards is required. And you could top up it, but you can't assert a compliance. Again, none of it's a comment on whether the approach taken by IESBA was the right or wrong one. They were setting standards for slightly different purposes. And when readers of audit reports want to know what are the ICEs that have been adopted, we wanted to make sure that they did not have to go through different national jurisdictional requirements to see where they've been topped up or topped down. So, you know, ultimately that may be a fundamental issue. This is part of our strategy work plan discussions, but I think we're all aware of why the IAASB landed where it did, but we're also aware of why IESBA did. And I think you could both be right in this instance if your goal is to get adoption of one standard and for one purpose and another standard for another purpose. Gabrielle,
do you want to come in, or
No, you said it all. Thank you.
all right? Thanks a lot. Shall we then move on? But I think Tom's last point is important. We need to then just make sure that the two teams still work together to make sure there's alignment. Thank you. Shall we move on?
Gabrielle, do you want to lead us in on sustainability?
Yeah, I can, Tom. Thank you very much. But this is really an update to the PIOB board. So both boards committed when our standards were certified, not only to the PIOB, but to our stakeholders in general, that we would be working together in a very coordinated way in this adoption and implementation phase. And that's exactly what we have been doing. The next slide, I think it's the next slide that clearly identifies the many initiatives that we have undertaking. Not all of them are joint initiatives, but many of them are joint and others are parallel. So there wasn't any complaint until now, since the standards were certified, from anyone, I would say, about any kind of lack of coordination and lack of communication, consistency, etc. We have been very carefully advancing our initiatives in terms of non-authoritative material, initiatives to support stakeholders, the groups that we created, the post-implementation or the implementation monitoring groups that we both created, and where both staffs are sitting on the other board's group to make sure that all the communication and information flows. So I think we could not have done more until now, and we will continue doing in that respect. Not only continuing what we did, mostly on the finalization of the standards. Next slide, please. I think it's still so. Yeah. Tom, this one is for you. The ISO 5000.
So all I want to highlight is you could see that we're entirely committed to supporting the marketplace in terms of a broad range of support activities out there, whether it's fact sheets, implementation guides, video series, applicability. One of the most important things that we're doing right now is a 3-part webinar series that Philly probably would have the more accurate numbers, but that are, I think, generating over 1,000 participants per webinar. So we're out there in the marketplace, fully supporting the adoption of our standards, and also recently put working on illustrative reports too. So I hope it shows that we're being responsive. We're continuing to gather information from a variety of sources of where we could allocate more resources in terms of implementation materials. Of course, I say this with a caution too, that we don't want to do too much. We're trying the Goldilocks approach, that the more you write, the more it becomes like further authoritative material too. So it's a balance that we're trying to take.
So next slide, please. Now, on the IESBA initiatives, I'm not going to mention the initiatives, but just from this list, I think that the PIOB board can see the much that we have done over the last 9 months, or a little bit less than that, because since March mostly. The idea is exactly to provide support to the jurisdictions, to policymakers, to the firms, and etc., in the adoption and implementation of these standards. As you will recall, there was some complaints about complexity. We haven't heard about it recently, so it seems that the problem is being, if the problem was there, is being overcome. But still, we made sure that we were issuing very simple and helpful documents, such as the explainer videos, just to give you an example, but also, and the Q&As, but also some documents like the proportionality of the IESA, which is a document which demonstrates that there is proportionality in the IESA, and that some arguments about its lack of proportionality may not be exactly to the point. And also the clarification of the list of the PI prohibitions in the IESA, which, I mean, it's in the standards, but we wanted to make sure that it was absolutely clear and easy to access, and not forcing everyone to go through the standards and pick up these prohibitions. Also, the differences between the IESA and audit standards. So documents and materials which are really aimed at being tools to facilitate the life of the users of the standards. Again, The standards are being slowly starting being adopted. We already have some jurisdictions. Australia was the first one, South Africa. I think this week we had news that Malaysia had also adopted both the ISO 5000 and the IESA. So it's moving even well before the effective dates. And again, the IMAG, the adoption, the monitoring group that we created, is starting to give its first results. We will soon hear from them. And this questions of complexity, difficulty in implementation, we have not been hearing about it. So it seems that the sustainability standards are really on their way and making their way. We are monitoring very closely the adoption and implementation path in many jurisdictions. There is a very interesting work that IESBA is doing with a jurisdictional profile, trying to characterize each jurisdiction in terms of how they the plans and how they advanced they are in the adoption of the standards. So we have a clear idea about what's happening everywhere, and there are a few coming. You know, I think that we can expect over the next 6 months, a few others to adopt the standard and some important jurisdictions. So we are happy with this post adoption and certification phase. I think that we are, of course, working with IAASB very closely, and that stakeholders are happy as well, not only with the coordination, but with the amount of support that we are providing, which does not mean, as Tom was saying, Bibles, 700 pages to explain the standards, but rather very simple and very close to the people materials and initiatives which aim at being really helpful and practical. So I think it's a positive balance that we have so far, not only of the coordination, but of the efforts in adoption and implementation that we have both been doing. And I think it's the end of the presentation, if I'm not wrong.
It is. Thank you, Gabriela. That was quite comprehensive. I think it is just, you know, we should be appreciative of the progress that we're seeing, and we're being advised of what is to come. And we'll keep an eye on the progress that's coming. I think at this particular juncture, let me just again take the opportunity to thank both Gabriela and Tom for the efforts in terms of the work that they do together in the spirit of public interest or enhancing public interest at this juncture. If there are no hands up, we'll move then to our next agenda item.